Welcome to the Shadow of History channel. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out more videos like this one. Within the quiet walls of her Arkansas apartment in 2005, the vibrant life of young Nona Dirksmeyer was tragically cut short, leaving behind a haunting legal mystery that remains chillingly unsolved to this day. Stooped over a simple basin in 1938, the young son of a sharecropper methodically washes the dust of the fields from his skin, a quiet testament to the enduring dignity of the working class. In 1963, 25-year-old Mary Brox gathers her 9 children, including sets of triplets and twins, to share a gentle bedtime story that briefly softens the edges of their busy life in hard-working Liverpool. Radiating a century of wisdom, the remarkable Sarah Knaus sits for a portrait in the United States in 1998, celebrating her status as the world's oldest person with an incredibly sharp and vibrant spirit. Emerging from the dark waters of Hanoi in 1967, John McCain is surrounded by Vietnamese civilians as his long journey from a naval pilot to a renowned prisoner of war begins with this capture. High in a lonely Colorado cabin, the mummified remains of Joshua Maddox were eventually discovered 7 years after he vanished, trapped within a narrow chimney in a tragic ending that police ruled a misfortune. Abandoned in the freezing death zone of Everest in 1996, Beck Weathers defied every medical probability by stumbling back into camp hours after his own grieving family had been told that he was gone. After falling into a mysterious slumber on a Swedish island, Carolina Olsen finally awoke 32 years later in 1908, remarkably remembering her teenage life as if she had only closed her eyes yesterday. Having survived the horrors of Columbine in 1999, high school sweethearts Nicholas and Stephanie were tragically murdered less than a year later, adding a dark chapter to the lingering shadows of that community's grief. Amidst the humid jungles of Vietnam in 1968, a young soldier carries the smiling faces of his girlfriend tucked into his helmet, keeping his heart anchored to a home that felt worlds away. While visiting Melbourne, Australia in 1940, a playful father executes a perfect handstand that leaves his young daughter wide-eyed with wonder, capturing a fleeting moment of pure domestic joy during a global conflict. Enshrined within the golden casing of a 1940s locket, a woman's delicate portrait serves as a portable sanctuary for a loved one, carrying her memory through the lonely miles and the uncertainty of war. Against the backdrop of a 1940s London housing block, a loyal dog stands as a vigilant guardian for its family, offering a sense of protection and constancy during the terrifying nights of the Blitz. Defying the deep-seated prejudices of 1991, Princess Diana reaches out to shake an AIDS patient's hand in Toronto without gloves, a compassionate gesture that began to dismantle the global stigma surrounding the misunderstood disease. Standing before the timeless Great Sphinx of Giza in 1864, a group of Japanese samurai paused during their mission to Europe, bridging 2 ancient and distant cultures in a single, extraordinary photographic encounter. As the sun rose over the devastation of Passchendaele in 1917, the scarred landscape of Belgium revealed the grim reality of industrial warfare, captured in a haunting image that speaks of immense human sacrifice. Fearing for their safety in 1966, the Apollo 1 crew posed for this parody portrait to warn of technical flaws, a chillingly prophetic gesture before a tragic fire claimed their lives at Cape Kennedy. During the 1960s, curious tourists gather at the edge of a massive crater near Las Vegas, are witnessing the awesome and terrifying power of atomic testing that redefined the scientific boundaries of the modern age. On a cold Valentine's Day in 1945, a technician from the U.S. Army receives a grateful kiss from a little French girl in Abancourt, celebrating the sweet return of freedom to her liberated village. Soaring 65 miles above the New Mexico desert in 1946, a modified V-2 rocket captured the first grainy photograph of our planet's curve, forever changing how humanity viewed its fragile home in space. Clad in specialized pressure suits that look like science fiction, the pilots of the SR-71 Blackbird stand beside their legendary aircraft at Lockheed Martin during the height of the Cold War in 1980. In a delightful collision of pop culture icons circa 1980, Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno share a moment with Fred Rogers on the set of The Incredible Hulk, blending strength with gentle kindness. Joy radiated through a Ukrainian-American community in 1953 as they celebrated the death of Joseph Stalin by serving free bowls of traditional borscht, marking the end of a long and brutal political era. Wrapped in the traditional robes of a desert warrior, Thomas Edward Lawrence remains an enigmatic figure of the Great War, unseen here in 1918 as the legendary leader known as Lawrence of Arabia. Breathing in the fresh air of the Netherlands in 1957, children attend a unique open-air school designed to promote health and vitality, proving that the best classrooms often have no walls at all. Standing amidst the tension of Belfast in 1981, a small child looks toward an armed soldier, a poignant reminder of how the innocence of youth often intersects with the harsh realities of political conflict. The camaraderie of the trenches is captured in 1918 as an American infantryman laughs heartily at his masked comrades, finding a moment of genuine humor despite the constant threat of a chemical attack. At the Berlin Zoo in the 1930s, a massive 4,000-pound elephant seal named Roland enjoys a refreshing snow bath from his dedicated handler, showcasing the unusual bonds formed between humans and majestic creatures. Wading through the rising floodwaters of Cambridge, Ontario in 1974, a determined police officer remains at his post, embodying the spirit of public service even as the elements conspire to wash it away. In a historic meeting of genius and charm in 1931, Charlie Chaplin and Albert Einstein share a smile at the premiere of City Lights, uniting the worlds of science and cinema in Hollywood. Floating high above the streets of Boston in 1860, this pioneering aerial photograph reveals a sprawling urban landscape of brick and stone, and offering a rare perspective on the city during the 19th century. Inside a humble Transylvania, Louisiana home in 1939, a dedicated African-American mother patiently teaches her children their first letters and numbers, planting seeds of knowledge and hope for a much brighter future. Braving a fierce New York City blizzard in 1914, a lone horse-drawn carriage struggles through the deep white drifts of snow, capturing a vanishing era of transport against the cold, unforgiving winter. In a moment of pure, rebellious whimsy circa 1980, a young Carrie Fisher finds herself tucked inside a metal trash can with a bottle of wine, perfectly capturing her legendary and irreverent wit. As the crowd fell silent in 1998, The Undertaker looked down from the steel cage in disbelief after mankind plunged 16 feet through the roof, a terrifying and unscripted moment in history. Bursting with the vibrant energy of 1974, the Swedish pop sensations of ABBA pose, together at the start of their global journey, ready to conquer the music world with their iconic, a melodic sound. Shadows and heavy silence fill a 1941 Singapore opium den where the flickering light reveals the haunting, somber reality of addiction tucked away in the narrow, smoke-filled corners of a forgotten city. In 1911, King George V steps away from his royal duties in Sunderland to meet a young, soot-covered miner, bridging the vast social divide of England through a single, respectful, and historic encounter. After vanishing from her sister's Berlin home in 2019, 15-year-old Rebecca Riusch left behind a grieving family and a baffling mystery that continues to haunt investigators and the public to this very day. The weary eyes of a coal miner's wife and children tell a story of immense hardship and quiet resilience, reflecting the heavy burden of unemployment that weighed upon families during the 1930s. On a sun-drenched farm, a clever farmer demonstrates a playful trick by milking a cow directly into the waiting mouth of a very lucky cat, capturing a simple moment of rural domestic humor. Following a perfectly normal phone call with her mother in 2009, Chef Claudia Lawrence sent one final text before vanishing into the night, leaving the city of York with a chilling mystery. Standing tall on Detroit's Washington Boulevard in 1904, a magnificent fountain of frozen ice creates a shimmering, crystalline landmark that transformed the Winter City street into a breathtaking and truly magical winter wonderland. In 1910, these young newsboys at Skeeter's Branch in St. Louis were captured by Louis Hine, puffing on cigarettes and losing their childhood innocence to the harsh, grimy streets of the city. During the 1940s, a Chinese-American man carefully labels his clothing to avoid being targeted by the rising anti-Japanese sentiment, a poignant reminder of the fear and complex identities shaped by global conflict. Despite being shot twice during an ambush in 1961, Swedish Major Eric Bonde calmly smokes a cigarette before heading back into the Congo jungle, embodying the incredible grit of the UN peacekeeping mission. Seated at her desk in 1941, 12-year-old Anne Frank focuses intently on her homework, a poignant and ordinary moment of childhood captured just before the shadows of history forced her family into hiding. In a charming display of harmony from 1955, Mitten the cat, Tosin the dog, and a tiny mouse share a peaceful moment together, proving that even the most unlikely animals can find friendship. During a 1969 outing in the park, a creative mother uses a clean trash can as a makeshift playpen for her baby while she focuses on her crochet, illustrating ingenious, everyday parenting. On the 1983 set of Conan the Destroyer, Arnold Schwarzenegger appears remarkably small, standing between the towering legends Wilt Chamberlain and Andre the Giant, creating a truly iconic and physically imposing photograph. While filming Taxi Driver in 1976, young Jodie Foster and Robert De Niro share a moment of intense focus, preparing to bring their gritty and legendary characters to life on the streets. Caught in the act during the 1970s, a young man faces arrest for growing marijuana, a candid snapshot of the evolving cultural and legal battles that define the era's complex counterculture movement. Suspended high above the ground in 1993, Jamie Lee Curtis prepares for a daring helicopter stunt for True Lies, showing the incredible teamwork and bravery required to create Hollywood's most thrilling sequences. Inside the ornate Oriental baths of Tbilisi during the 1880s, men gather for traditional massages, preserving a centuries-old ritual of relaxation and community within the beautiful arched architecture of ancient Georgia. The founding members of Pink Floyd stand together in 1968, their experimental spirit and avant-garde style ready to push the boundaries of rock music and create some of the most influential albums. Amidst the chaos of a 1962 Venezuelan rebellion, priest Luis Padillo bravely offers last rites to a fallen soldier, a powerful image of faith and compassion that won the World Press photo. Whizzing through the historic streets of Rome in the 1950s, stylish couples on scooters embody the romantic and carefree spirit of the Italian capital during a decade of renewed hope and glamour. In the busy composing room of 1942, workers meticulously assemble the sports section of the New York Times, a tactile and intricate process that brought the world's news to the morning doorstep. After surviving a brutal massacre on Hill 303 by playing dead, a dazed Corporal Roy Day Jr. is rescued in 1950, his eyes reflecting the unimaginable horrors of the Korean War conflict. In a moment of perfect irony from 1966, a man finds himself in a situation that defies logic, proving that life often possesses a sense of humor more scripted than any fictional comedy. Stepping back into the late 1800s, this vintage dentistry scene reveals the primitive and often painful tools used by early practitioners, and reminding us of the long and difficult journey of medical progress. Tension and anticipation fill the air in 1955, just seconds before a moment of pure happiness erupts, capturing the fleeting electric thrill that comes right before a long-awaited and joyful life event. With pride etched on his face, a sailor from the USSORISKANY displays his intricate tattoos in the 1950s, each mark serving as a permanent souvenir of his journeys across the sea. In a classic 1990s living room, a determined mother takes the controller to help her children conquer a difficult level in Super Mario Land, bridging the generation gap through shared electronic play. Dressed in their finest Sunday clothes, these young boys celebrate Easter morning on the south side of Chicago in 1941, their bright smiles reflecting a moment of community pride and youthful holiday joy. Deep beneath the city in 1959, the heavy steel vaults of the Federal Reserve Bank in New York protect the nation's wealth, a rare glimpse into the silent, high-security heart of finance. Museum staff in 1916 work with careful precision at the American Museum of Natural History to assemble a massive dinosaur limb, piece by piece, bringing the ancient giants of the past back. The tragic 2018 death of Amanda Gill in Mexico took a dark turn when her body was returned to England, missing its internal organs, sparking a horrifying investigation into suspected black market trafficking. In a moment of quiet companionship from 1954, a young girl gently cradles her tabby cat, their bond capturing the simple, timeless love between a child and her pet in a changing world. The tragic life of Otabenga saw him taken from the Congo and displayed in a zoo, a victim of deep prejudice who sadly never found his way back home before 1916. A thick, suffocating blanket of smog blocks out the midday sun in 1939 St. Louis, turning the city streets into a dark, eerie twilight that prompted urgent calls for environmental air reform. With the wind in their hair and joy on their faces, a group of boys on skates raced through the streets of Washington, D.C. in 1922, all enjoying a simple afternoon adventure. In a shameful display of hatred from 1960, segregationists in Louisiana harassed 6-year-old Ruby Bridges with a cruel effigy, yet her quiet courage forever changed the landscape of American education and equality. The steep hills of San Francisco are captured in 1954 at Nob Hill and Pine Street, where the iconic cable cars and classic architecture define the unique character of this legendary city. Against the rugged beauty of 1965 Ireland, a young boy pauses with a basket of tiny kittens, his gentle expression reflecting the quiet, rural life and the simple joys of the countryside. In 1910, a young Native American child sits quietly beside a loyal dog, reflecting a peaceful moment of companionship that transcends the many cultural shifts occurring across the American landscape at that time. Radiating joy on their wedding day in 1992, Barack and Michelle Obama begin a shared journey that would eventually lead them from a Chicago church to the highest office in the United States. Against the backdrop of a bustling Berlin street in 1931, a resourceful young boy manages his portable lemonade stand, displaying a touch of entrepreneurial spirit during the final years of the Weimar Republic. Exuding her signature defiance and unmatched confidence in 1933, Katharine Hepburn gazes into the lens, cementing her reputation as a Hollywood trailblazer who consistently refused to follow any of the traditional rules. Off the coast of New Jersey in 1933, Captain Khan stands beside a massive 5,000-pound manta ray that became entangled in his anchor, showcasing the incredible and mysterious giants of the deep. In a charming break from the era's usual formality, a Victorian couple struggles to suppress their laughter during an 1890s portrait session, revealing the timeless, playful humanity hidden behind their stiff, traditional clothing. During the golden age of flight in the 1960s, passengers were treated to elaborate meals served on fine china, proving that airplane food was once a luxurious highlight of the modern travel experience. The iconic red windmill of the original Moulin Rouge glows in 1914 Paris, standing as a legendary beacon of bohemian nightlife and artistic expression just before the world was changed by global war. During the halftime of a 1920 football match, the players and spectators gather in a casual huddle, reflecting the rugged and unpolished beginnings of a sport that would soon capture the national imagination. Amidst the legendary music and mud of Woodstock in 1969, a young woman shares the festival experience with her pet monkey, embodying the eccentric and free-spirited nature of the era's counterculture movement. Photographed by John Johnson in the late 1890s, these impeccably dressed siblings from South Dakota wear fine clothing and accessories that suggest a level of family wealth quite rare for the frontier plains. Looking fierce and determined in 1868, samurai of the Satsuma domain prepare for battle during the Boshin War, representing the final storied stand of Japan's traditional warrior class against the coming modern age. A lone figure walks through a quiet, snow-covered street in 1960 New York City, where the soft winter light and silent drifts transform the bustling metropolis into a serene and deeply poetic urban landscape. The brave men of the Vancouver Fire Department stand proudly with their towering wooden ladders in 1910, ready to protect their growing coastal city with the limited but essential technology of the era. In the Valley of the Kings in 1922, the stunning bust of Tutankhamun is carefully carried from his tomb, marking one of the most significant and breathtaking archaeological discoveries in the history of mankind. During a break on the 1974 set of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, John Cleese and Graham Chapman relax in costume, finding a moment of quiet calm amidst their surreal and hilarious filmmaking. Along the peaceful banks of the Main in 1955 Germany, children play near the water's edge, capturing a gentle moment of recovery and daily life, a decade after the end of the war. Flashes of light illuminate the dark sky in this 1917 long-exposure photograph, capturing the terrifying and constant energy of trench warfare as British soldiers endured the brutal realities of the First World War. Planted long ago in the Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh, the ancient palm tree of 1874 stands as a living monument to botanical history, surviving for over a century within its sheltered, glass-walled home. In 1880, the massive stone towers of the Brooklyn Bridge rise above the East River as workers complete the suspension cables of what would soon become a world-renowned masterpiece of American civil engineering. Before the watchful eyes of the law in 1929, a massive tower of alcohol barrels is prepared for destruction, standing as a stark symbol of the controversial and ultimately doomed era of Prohibition. Surrounded by the cold Atlantic in April 1912, the Titanic is seen in its final known photograph afloat, a haunting image of the majestic ship before its tragic and world-altering encounter with destiny. At the Berlin Zoo in the 1930s, a dedicated handler gives Roland, a massive 4,000-pound elephant seal, a refreshing snow bath, while showcasing the unique and gentle bond between the animal and man. In a gesture of pure innocence amidst the busy streets of 1929 Paris, a little girl reaches out to hand a bouquet of lilies to a police officer, softening the city's stern atmosphere. Crowned the champion watermelon eater during a 1935 4th of July celebration in Brooklyn, a young boy enjoys his messy victory, capturing the simple, competitive joy of a classic American summer holiday tradition. In a powerful reversal of roles in 1890 Alabama, a young daughter patiently teaches her mother how to read, illustrating the deep thirst for education and the quiet strength of families seeking progress. The sky over Paris in 1900 is filled with majestic shapes as a balloon race begins. He's showcasing the daring spirit of early aviation and the public's fascination with the newfound thrill of flight. Despite the hardships of World War II, a compassionate lady in Paris pauses to feed a homeless cat, proving that even in the darkest times, small acts of kindness can still survive and flourish. The massive RMS Mauritania sits in a Liverpool dry dock in 1909, revealing the incredible scale of the world's fastest ocean liner as workers prepare it for another journey across the vast Atlantic. A Belgian family heads for the local market in 1912, their horse-drawn cart filled with goods as they participate in a way of life that had remained unchanged for many generations before them. Pedaling through the streets of 1922 Chicago, a stylish woman on her bicycle represents the growing independence and mobility of modern women during the vibrant and fast-moving era of the Roaring Twenties. Clad in her sturdy riding gear, African-American cowgirl Nellie Brown poses with her horse circa 1900, representing the often overlooked but vital presence of black women in the history of the American West. In the quiet sanctuary of his 1948 study, Albert Einstein sits surrounded by the books and papers that fueled his world-changing theories, capturing the private life of humanity's most famous and influential physicist. Wide-eyed and full of wonder in 1948, a young boy witnesses the magic of television for the very first time through a store window, glimpsing a technological revolution that would soon change everything. Concentrating on her task in 1943, a skilled woman grinds a machined part for the war effort, embodying the strength of the millions of female workers who kept the nation's vital industries running. In 1956, the finalists of the Miss Correct Posture contest pose alongside their own X-rays, a bizarre and fascinating relic of a time when beauty and perfect skeletal alignment were judged side by side. High above the New York skyline in 1929, the Art Deco crown of the Chrysler Building takes shape as daring steelworkers construct what would briefly become the tallest and most beautiful building ever. Enjoying a leisurely stroll through Manhattan's Madison Park in 1905, a woman and three young girls capture the quiet elegance of the Edwardian era against the backdrop of a rapidly growing and modernizing city. Equipped with the best technology of 1925, a local fire brigade stands ready for action, their polished engine and disciplined stance reflecting a new era of professionalized emergency response and community safety. At the Woodward Coal Mines in 1900, a group of young breaker boys pose with soot-stained faces, serving as a sobering reminder of the harsh child labor that once powered the industrial age. Sharing a simple and hearty Italian meal in 1870, a couple captures the enduring importance of food and family in a photograph that feels remarkably modern despite its age of over a century. Bathed in the warm glow of the 1910s holiday season, a young girl hugs her dog beside a decorated tree, capturing the timeless spirit of Christmas and the universal joy of childhood pets. Hungry pedestrians gather outside a New York City restaurant in 1937 to watch a cook prepare a steaming pot of spaghetti, a mesmerizing street-side performance that offered a brief and savory distraction. Undeterred by the rising floodwaters of Buckinghamshire in 1954, a dedicated milkman makes his morning deliveries by boat, proving that neither rain nor high tide could stop the tradition of the daily round. Puffing on a pipe while resting on her Appalachian porch in 1917, an elderly woman embodies the rugged and self-sufficient spirit of mountain life that remained largely untouched by the modern outside world. Amidst the brick alleyways of 1940s, New York, a group of children find endless adventure in their simple street games, creating their own vibrant world within the shadows of the massive, crowded city. In a heartbreaking farewell during World War II, a young child reaches out to say goodbye to her father, capturing the immense personal sacrifice made by millions of families during the global conflict. In a surreal and humorous 1957 moment, a llama peers out from a car window in Times Square, New York, proving that the city has always been a place for the truly unexpected. Surrounded by his children in 1938 West Virginia, a coal miner enjoys a rare moment of leisure, finding comfort and strength in the love of his family after a long day underground. Inside their modest log home in late 19th century Kentucky, a young couple shares a quiet moment, their simple surroundings reflecting the hard-working and resilient life of early settlers in the American South. Stranded by the sudden collapse of his country in 1991, Sergei Krikalev spent 311 days aboard the Mir space station, orbiting the Earth as the Soviet Union ceased to exist. In a tender 1960 moment in San Francisco, Debbie Reynolds walks with her young daughter, Carrie Fisher, capturing a rare glimpse of two future Hollywood legends before their lives became world-famous icons. Stretching across the rugged mountains to meet the gray sea, the Great Wall of China reaches its dramatic end, standing as a silent and ancient testament to the immense power of history. In a legendary 1996 football hoax, Ali Dia convinced a Premier League team he was a world-class talent, remarkably making it onto the pitch for 53 minutes before his secret was revealed. Long before she was a global superstar, a 14-year-old Gwen Stefani nervously waits for Sting's autograph in 1983, on a charming encounter between a young fan and the music icon she admired. Sitting with a serious and contemplative expression in 1882, 3-year-old Albert Einstein stares into the camera, showing early signs of the deep thought that would one day redefine our entire scientific understanding. Raising her voice during her freshman year at Howard University in 1982, Kamala Harris joins an anti-apartheid protest in Washington, D.C., marking an early chapter in her lifelong journey toward American political leadership. Standing at London's King's Cross Station in 1939, little Freddie Somar bravely says goodbye to his parents as he is relocated to the countryside for safety at the very start of World War II. In 1978, dance teacher Patsy Swayze stands proudly between her son Patrick and daughter-in-law Lisa, capturing a beautiful moment of family talent and grace long before they became global household names in Hollywood history. Beside an empty crib in 1987, Joy White faces the heartbreak of her infant daughter's kidnapping from a Harlem hospital, a tragic mystery that finally reached a joyful conclusion more than 20 years later. Walking along a sun-dappled path in 1962, President John F. Kennedy shares a quiet, tender stroll with his young daughter Caroline, offering a rare glimpse into the private life of the busy American leader. Under the desert stars of Egypt in 1961, the legendary Louis Armstrong plays a soulful serenade for his wife beside the Great Sphinx, in blending the magic of American jazz with the ancient world's majesty. Captured in a rare and grainy photograph from the mid-20th century, Suba Talfa appears in one of the only known images of the woman who would eventually become the mother of Saddam Hussein. After the tragic loss of his wife, actor Rick Moranis walked away from fame in 1997 to focus entirely on raising his children, a selfless decision he embraces today with absolutely no regrets. Trembling with fear and exhaustion in April 1945, 16-year-old German soldier Hans-Georg Henke breaks down after being captured by the U.S. Ninth Army as the devastating war in Europe finally reaches its end. Passengers settle into their seats during a 1946 flight from Puerto Rico to New York, are experiencing the newfound speed of post-war aviation that began to shrink the vast distances between islands and the mainland. Standing in somber reflection near the Eternal Flame in 1966, a Soviet war veteran honors his fallen comrades on Victory Day, his face etched with the heavy memories of a long and brutal conflict. Gathered together in the bright sunlight of 1904 Massachusetts, a group of local children stare curiously into the camera lens, capturing a simple and innocent moment from the very beginning of the century. Against a backdrop of heavy destruction in Poland, a clever photographer uses a painted screen to mask the surrounding ruins of World War II, offering his subjects a brief, beautiful escape from the devastation. Amidst the chaos of the 1968 Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, a young couple's wedding day is startlingly interrupted by the presence of heavy tanks, capturing a surreal collision between personal love and geopolitical force. Years after diving into a freezing reservoir to save 20 people from a submerged trolleybus in 1976, Soviet swimming champion Shavers Karapetyan remains a humble symbol of extraordinary courage and selfless human heroism. Eager spectators crowd the windows and hallways of the Palace of Versailles in 1919 to witness the historic signing of the treaty, a monumental event that formally concluded the devastating First World War. Before the era of modern digital displays, this rustic speed limit sign from the 1920s served as a simple, static warning to early motorists navigating the developing roads of a rapidly changing America. Demonstrating the true power of forgiveness in 1983, Pope John Paul II sits within a quiet Roman prison cell to meet face-to-face with Mehmet Agca, the man who had attempted to take his life. In a curious blend of public health and performance, a stage director administers the smallpox vaccine to his chorus line girls in 1947 New York, ensuring the show went on despite the outbreak. Captured by German forces in 1941, Stalin's son Yakov Djugashvili faced a tragic fate in a concentration camp, met only with his father's cold and famously brutal indifference toward his own child's suffering. Determining the future of the post-war world in 1943, Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill gather at the Tehran Conference to coordinate their final military strategy against the Axis powers during the height of conflict. Surrounded by the groundbreaking practical effects of 1968, visionary director Stanley Kubrick sits on the set of his masterpiece, 2001, A Space Odyssey, a film that would forever redefine the entire science fiction genre. Captured during the production of Return of the Jedi in 1983, these behind-the-scenes moments reveal the incredible artistry and imagination required to bring the epic conclusion of the original Star Wars trilogy to life. In 1975, filmmaker George Lucas poses with an early prototype for the beloved droid R2-D2, or a modest mechanical creation that would soon become one of the most recognizable icons in the history of cinema. To protect a priceless Renaissance masterpiece from the threat of Allied bombing during World War II, the Statue of David was meticulously encased in a massive protective shell of solid bricks and mortar. Before it became the towering symbol of New York Harbor, the Statue of Liberty stood majestically over the streets of Paris in 1886, just before being carefully disassembled for its long journey across the sea. Radiating hope and youthful affection in 1965, a young Stephen Hawking and his bride Jane celebrate their wedding day, are beginning a profound partnership that would endure through his legendary and world-changing scientific career. At the 1984 premiere of the thriller Firestarter, a young Drew Barrymore shares a playful moment with author Stephen King, celebrating the cinematic adaptation of one of his most popular and chilling literary works. Inside their modest home in 1965, Stephen and Jane Hawking share a quiet moment of domestic life, a poignant glimpse of the brilliant physicist before his physical condition and global fame reached their heights. Capturing the imagination and fears of the Victorian public in 1865, this innovative stereoscopic ghost photograph used clever double exposure techniques to create a hauntingly realistic image of a spirit from the beyond. Showcasing his lifelong passion for wildlife in the 1980s, a young Steve Irwin gently cradles a tiny baby platypus, a quiet preview of the infectious enthusiasm that would eventually make him a global icon. Two titans of the burgeoning personal computer revolution, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, are captured in a rare moment of relaxed conversation in 1991, reflecting on the industry they both helped to build. In a moment of classic corporate defiance in 1983, a young Steve Jobs playfully gives the finger to an IBM sign, perfectly capturing the rebellious and competitive spirit that defined the early days of Apple. Seated cross-legged in his sparsely furnished home in 1984, Steve Jobs gazes thoughtfully into the camera, embodying the minimalist philosophy and intense focus that would eventually drive his incredible success and global influence. On the set of his 1982 blockbuster, Steven Spielberg shares a tender and creative moment with the animatronic star of E.T., a film that would touch the hearts of millions around the entire world. Captivating the audience at the Yale Coliseum in 1975, a young Stevie Nicks delivers a powerful and ethereal performance, cementing her status as one of the most mesmerizing and iconic figures in rock history. In 1907, the respected Stoney First Nation guide Samson Beaver poses with his wife Leah and daughter Frances, a dignified family portrait captured during a botanical expedition through the beautiful and rugged Canadian Rockies. Stacked high with thousands of discarded rifles in 1945, a storeroom at a Norwegian aerodrome serves as a silent, powerful monument to the surrender of German forces and the long-awaited return of national peace. On a 1950s film set, John Wayne shares a light-hearted moment with a Crow-Indian actor showing the behind-the-scenes camaraderie that existed between the stars of the screen and the real Western warriors. Bathed in warm hues and adorned with patterned wallpaper, this 1970s dining room serves as a perfect time capsule of the decade's distinct interior design and the cozy, eclectic heart of the home. The Alamo stands in quiet dignity in 1876, its weathered stone walls telling the story of a legendary battle that became a foundational myth for Texas and a symbol of unyielding personal courage. In 1984, South Korea, a simple industrial lift carries workers toward their daily tasks in Gwangju, illustrating the rapid urban development and the hard-working spirit that fueled the nation's incredible economic rise. Seated for a formal portrait in the 1870s, a father and daughter share a quiet, stiffly posed moment that captures the enduring bond of family through the early lens of Victorian-era photography. Back when hard work meant grueling physical labor, these workers utilized every ounce of their strength to build the infrastructure of a growing nation, leaving behind a legacy carved from sweat and grit. With her husband serving on the front lines in 1944, a determined mother takes up the wrench to maintain the family car, personifying the vital domestic strength that kept the country moving. A young boy and his loyal dog sit together in 1889, their timeless friendship captured in a faded photograph that reminds us that the bond between children and their pets transcends every century. In the autumn of 1920, a young girl stirs a steaming pot of apple butter in Maryland, preserving a traditional harvest craft that once filled the winter larders of rural American families. Elegant pedestrians navigate the bustling sidewalks of 1928 New York City, where the soaring skyscrapers and sophisticated fashions created an atmosphere of boundless energy and the promise of the modern American dream. A French soldier stares through the haunting glass eyes of an early gas mask in 1916, a grim reflection of the chemical horrors that defined the brutal trench warfare of the Great War. In 1901 Arkansas, a young girl gently holds her goat, offering a sweet and simple glimpse into a rural childhood where the rhythms of the farm provided the backdrop for a lifetime. Workmen in 1891 Idaho labored to lay a massive wooden water pipeline utilizing the natural resources of the frontier to bring essential life-giving water to the growing communities of the American West. Two women catch the breeze with a handheld sail while roller skating in 1923, demonstrating a whimsical and inventive approach to recreation that briefly captured the playful spirit of the Roaring Twenties. A group of weary young spinners stands outside an Alabama cotton factory in the early 1900s, their dusty faces highlighting the difficult labor conditions that once fueled the nation's massive textile industry. In 1903, the heart of New York City is a chaotic scene of steel and stone as Times Square undergoes construction, beginning its journey toward becoming the world's most famous illuminated crossroads. A few wooden buildings and a dusty trail mark the humble beginnings of Las Vegas in 1895, long before the neon lights and desert luxury transformed the small outpost into a global destination. Dressed in their finest lace and suits, a stylish family poses for a portrait in 1907, radiating a sense of pride and social standing during the refined elegance of the Edwardian era. Surrounded by scaffolding in 1883, Paris, the Statue of Liberty is meticulously assembled, piece by piece, a monumental gift of friendship preparing for its long journey across the Atlantic to New York. Henry Ford sits proudly in his first experimental automobile in 1896, a simple machine of bicycle wheels and iron that would eventually ignite a global revolution in transportation and industrial manufacturing.